Hi, my name is Andrew Cole, and this is my submission for Brief 3, Furniture for Life. I've created a CNC'd plywood side table with a resin inlay. So I began my process by doing research into different flat pack furniture that's existed previously, looking at ways that it can be constructed and slot together, and I found that a lot of it relies on slot and tab designs or the use of heavy duty bolts and other assorted things like that. I was really taken by one design I saw by a company that ships out CNC'd boards with little tabs still attached for you to assemble at home. They used a locking mechanism with slots and tabs that I thought worked really smoothly. I then moved on to my ideation and just spitballed with ideas for stools, lamps, side tables, just looking at the different potential things and thinking through how they might be created. I started thinking about the idea of doing a resin inlay. I've been taking a mold making class where we've used a lot of resin, and it's something I see around a lot on Pinterest and Facebook, and I really liked the idea of it. So I explored different patterns I could do, and I really liked the idea of fairly symmetrical pattern with kind of rounded forms, as it would work best with the CNCing process. And then kind of referencing my research, I started looking at the kind of nitty-gritties of assembling a side table, which is kind of where my mind was going, with kind of slots and tabs and how you'd use screws. I liked the idea of a top surface being clean, and interesting ways of achieving this. And I came up with a convoluted locking mechanism for holding the legs in place. So I started doing some prototypes of these kind of spitball idea prototypes, not functional but visual. And I came to realize that I couldn't create with these cardboard models the type of design I was thinking of, even though some of the ones I created I did quite like, such as this one. It wasn't hitting the mark, so I progressed to doing a 3D model mock-up of what I had in my head, and I came up with this. And it had a more refined locking mechanism, thankfully needing less pieces. But it was still not as refined as it could be. So on the recommendation of our teachers, I created an Illustrator file and got it laser cut. And this is what I got back. It's decent. It looks like a stool, but that might be because it's small, but I think mainly the leg angle and the leg height is ill-proportioned. I also learned key things about clearances and not to leave any when using wood because it's incredibly wobbly, and that I needed to do something to prevent the legs from moving. So I started refining my design. I added a hoop in around the bottom, which is actually where the name for the stool comes from, that provides a key structural support element in preventing the legs from moving around. I also refined the internal structures just a little bit, simplified, and I added all the required dog bones for the CNCing process. I then mocked it up and sent it out. Then we started the fabrication process. As we all know, they arrived quite late and I got very stressed, but it arrived. I did some sanding to get it all fitting properly. So this was mainly sanding out all the tabs so that everything slotted and it fit together nicely. And I was really pleased to find that it all fitted together, bar the top two pieces, without the need of any fixtures. It just held itself in place, which was a really good sign for my design. The next step was to drill the holes for the bolts. Now, this is a much more complicated process than I initially anticipated. This is because all 3 pieces have to have perfectly lined up holes, and there are 8 of them. The way I did this is I started with one piece and drilled the holes in it, measuring the locations from my design. Then what I did is I used that as a template for the other pieces, and for the big one, it needed bigger holes because it had threaded inlays, a threaded insert for holding the bolts. I used an offcut with a bigger hole, so a 7.5mm hole, which I used as the guide after I drilled the 6mm holes into the top using the previously cut pieces as a guide. Then I inserted the threaded inserts, which went in smoothly, which was great. Looking really clean, which I was a little bit surprised by, but very pleased by. And I did a mock assembly, which actually worked really well. The bolts all went in. I was so relieved. I completely forgot to take photos when I was doing my first varnish because I had my timeline prepped and it was late. It was like 11 o'clock and I got done by 1 a.m. and I just forgot to. So this is what it looked like post-varnish. I was doing another test assembly to make sure it still fitted together, which it did, which was great. I then masked off the top and was ready for my resin pour. Now, I'd sealed inside these inlays so that the resin wouldn't seep into the wood, which is something I'd learned could happen from my research, and was really careful not to let happen. This is getting my mask ready. I completely covered the thing in paper because I didn't want any drips to get into the wood. Did my pour. Now, I did a really good job. I'm really happy with it, but I should have used a spirit level to make sure it's level because we have some bulges and some slumps, which were a pain to get out with the power sander. Now, I assembled the thing because I didn't want to clamp it onto the bench and have a lopsided sanding. So it was actually working itself as a table, which was really fun to use. I power sanded it down a lot until it was perfectly smooth, just before we started pulling through to the red next ply. Then it was time for the top coat of varnish, which really, really kicked up that black, which I'm really pleased with. Here are my hero shots. So this is it, by my couches with a few things on it, looking stunning. Without anything on it, just to show it off. Yeah. I'm just super pleased with how this came out and glad to show you guys. Yeah, so thanks for watching. Hope you had a good time. Bye.